and welcome to CX Today. I'm Rhys Fisher, Deputy Editor, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Stuart Dorman, the Chief Innovation Officer at Sabio. Stuart, thank you for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thanks Rhys, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. No, looking forward to the chat. So we're going to start talking about Agentic AI today. And what are some of the key benefits that you think businesses can expect from implementing Agentic AI in their customer service and contact center operations? And perhaps what are some of the challenges or limitations that companies should be aware of when adopting this technology?
So I think in terms of benefits, we are already seeing some really significant improvements in productivity in the handling of customer service interactions when using, I'm going to use the word AI as a broader term, and we'll talk more about agentic AI, a bit later on, but, the ability to increase automation, the ability to, streamline tasks, maybe lower value tasks within a customer interaction. I think the ability to maybe level the playing field between your most experienced employees and maybe people that are just coming out of training, using assisted AI to help people get access to information quickly and solve problems. We're seeing benefits in terms of improving the overall quality of the customer experience. So, if you think about the traditional quality process where you might listen in and coach somebody on a small percentage of their calls, using this technology to be able to really focus in on the areas where the particular customer service representative needs help, ensuring they give consistent responses, making sure they're following the right processes, maybe making sure they're following compliance processes and so on. So I think that's, there are really, really clear benefits to organizations from adopting this technology. And, some of the returns that we see in this can be quite short, but, getting started with it and then looking at the long-term value and using the data to understand, future sort of strategies and rollouts of this is really important. You talked about some of the challenges as well. I think, as with any new wave of technology, it does require organizations to maybe really rethink the way that their operations are set up to fully exploit what this technology can do. So, thinking about how you operationalize this, how do you set your operation up in order to manage the quality and the output of this AI technology in the way that you would do with your human workforce. So I think that's one thing that people are really thinking about. I think it's also important to look at the customer journey and look at the ways in which your organization is structured and think in the mind of the customer so that we start removing any customer journey silos is really important. I think also challenging some of the perceived wisdom around the choices that customers make when they contact us. So, traditionally we've tried to think voice is bad because it's expensive, and, do we want to speak to customers and can we try and force them down the route of chat or online or something like that. And I think this technology opens up new opportunities for us maybe to think differently about the way that we engage with customers. So maybe conversations are good. Maybe we'll increase the numbers of conversations that the customer will have with us, not necessarily with a human, but with this capability. Or maybe we can continue to allow customers to use email, but streamline that process as well. So, I think there are huge opportunities here, but it will require us to rethink our operations to really exploit what can be done.
Yeah, absolutely. So next up here, perhaps more specifically looking at customer service and experience, because I know that's the area that Sabio primarily deals with. In your experience, are there any areas of that where Agentic AI most effectively enhances it? And how do you ensure that it adds value without replacing that human touch that you mentioned earlier?
Well, I think, thinking about what's important about the human touch is the first thing. Do customers really want the human touch? Are they just needing reassurance, for example, or empathy in the task, in the issue that they're contacting about? Can technology deliver that experience to them? Can it be empathetic, or can it reassure them? Is the customer just looking to communicate with you using their voice? as opposed to going to a website or sending an email, because it's the most convenient method for them to engage with you, and it's the most efficient way for them to engage with you. And therefore, can you sort of rethink, the way that we can use voice as a digital channel? So I think, the human touch is a really interesting concept and a really interesting idea. And, that doesn't necessarily mean that we replace humans with AI and conversational experiences, but it does make us think and challenge what the customer is actually looking to achieve when they communicate with us, and how can we bring together AI and human experiences to deliver the best outcome for them in the most productive way. So I think that tends to be how we look at it. It's not necessarily that we're going to slap some technology on this particular problem and try and solve it. It's really looking at the human experience and the channels that they're choosing, and helping to design an experience around that combines both AI technology and humans in various different shapes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So sticking with Sabio specifically, do you perhaps have a particular example where your company helped a client implement agentic AI to improve their customer service operations? Perhaps you could talk about maybe the outcome of that and how you managed to help them succeed, I suppose.
Yeah. So we've been working in this space now for certainly 23 years, I think it is. I was first involved in setting up what we now call our AI practice many years ago, and I'm going to be careful about the use of the word agentic AI, because it's a term that's being used to describe everything at the moment, and in its purest sense. It's not just a binary thing. You don't just suddenly switch on agentic AI. There are ways in which you can layer agentic capabilities into existing, conversational experiences. And as I say, that's what we've been delivering for customers now for over 20 years. So quite often what we're doing at the moment is looking at ways in which we can take an existing conversational AI, machine learning driven experience that we've been delivering for customers, and how can we start layering agentic capabilities over the top of that? So maybe traditionally it's been a more deterministic approach, a more predefined approach that uses AI to solve a particular task in a more linear format. And how can we layer agentic capabilities on top of that to be able to give us more freedom and to allow the customer to express themselves in ways that we maybe haven't designed or have catered for in terms of our deterministic design. And therefore opening up another wave of different opportunities for us to engage with the customer using the AI platform and maybe increase automation levels, to areas that we couldn't previously automate. And we've got lots of examples of this. We do a lot of work in the retail sector, for example, for some very large retailers, and we front all of the interactions coming into their business with AI, either on the voice channel or chat channels, or increasingly email. And we're sort of layering agentic capabilities on top of that. We're doing some work in the airline sector again to really solve a lot of problems there using this technology, handling millions and millions of calls a year. For an insurer, we've managed to automate their first notification of loss. I think it's sort of, the last time I checked, it was in excess of 40% of those first notification of loss interactions were being solved by AI, and then layering agentic on top of that is helping us as well. For another organization, we're helping to use generative AI, not necessarily agentic, but generative AI, to really drive high levels of automation on their email channel, which wasn't really possible even just a year ago. But we're really driving high levels of automation there, and sort of using this generative and agentic technology to be able to help them streamline that whole process as well. So I think the interesting thing about this is it's a general purpose technology. It works across lots of different industries. It doesn't necessarily have to be agentic in its purest sense. There are different aspects of AI technology that we're using to solve genuine customer service challenges, improving productivity, and making it better for customers because we can be more responsive at the same time. So there's so much opportunity in this space at the moment.
Yeah. Sort of following on from what you've said there, because again, I'm going to ask you about situations which I imagine you've run into working at Sabio, where perhaps a company you're working with is a little bit hesitant about fully embracing AI. Perhaps they've heard a horror story or they've had a bad experience in the past. So how do you at Sabio help businesses overcome these concerns and kind of build confidence in their use of AI?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think often, I see the concerns aren't necessarily over its effectiveness because the evidence is almost overwhelming now that this technology, it is effective and it does deliver value. It's almost a bit like questioning whether maybe 20 years ago we should have a website. It's the value is absolutely there. What we often find is that people have a bigger challenge on how to get started with this and where to apply the technology in a realistic sense. I've spoken to so many organizations now that have been running AI projects for 6, 12, 18 months, but haven't gone live with them yet, haven't put them into production, customers aren't interacting with them. And I think that's the biggest challenge. And, we try to go live quickly. And, often, we're live and showing value within a few weeks of a project starting. And using the information that we're gathering through the AI platforms in order to inform our decision-making processes and understand what problems are logical to solve next in our sequence of our backlog of work, if you like, that we're generating. And using, as I say, using the data collected by the technology to drive our decision-making process. And for me, that's the thing. It's how to get started with this and getting to value quickly. That's the bigger challenge, not necessarily, the concerns over where it works or that we have seen a few horror stories as well, as I think we touched on earlier on, around organizations that maybe put too much trust in this and then put a generative AI chatbot on their website and it's either given the wrong information because it's not been grounded correctly in the right data, or people have been able to manipulate it to give away a product for $1 or something like that. So there are horror stories, but largely speaking, the biggest challenge is knowing how and where to get started. So that's really what we're focused on at Sabio, is helping organizations take those first steps, get their organization set up correctly, make sure they've got the right skills in place, show value quickly, and then have a roadmap with a clear return on investment as to how they scale it.
Yeah, perfect. And what you're saying there kind of leads on nicely to my next question, which is around what steps businesses can take maybe to ensure that they're getting the most out of their agentic AI or just more generally AI solutions.
Yeah. So, as I say, getting started and getting something live is the key, I think, and using the data to create and drive your strategy. But in the background as well, it's making sure that you're thinking over the long term, making sure that you are building the right skills within your organization and partnering with an organization where maybe you don't have those skills, or at least in the short term you don't have those skills, so you can actually bring them on board if you think it's relevant. There are lots of different skills that are really needed to bring this technology to life and extract the most value from it and help it to achieve its full potential. And I think that's what people don't often realize, is that when you implement an AI platform, a conversational AI platform, for example, yes, it might be able to answer some simple questions out of the box or fulfill a task, but is it performing to its full potential? Are you extracting the most value out of it? And there are lots and lots of skills that are needed in the background to really make that work. Understanding human behavior, looking at linguistics, making sure you've got the right data, making sure you're using the data to ensure that you give the highest quality response back. How do you ask the question in the right way? All of these things come together to create a platform that really is performing at its optimal level and sort of getting close to human levels, not just you switch it on out of the box and it can answer some basic questions, and that's it, kind of thing. So I think, yeah, it's getting started. It's using data to drive the process, making sure you've got the operational procedures around managing this technology, and making sure that you're thinking about this from a joined up customer view as well, thinking about the customer journey, and making sure that you're not breaking the journey and you're applying it across the entire journey the customer goes on is important.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that's something we see a lot in the space, this perhaps presumption that it's very simple to implement and forgetting that actually a lot goes into the back end of it. So just finally here, looking a little bit towards the future, how do you see agentic AI perhaps evolving over the next 3 to 5 years, and how will that impact the contact center and customer service space specifically?
So I think, first of all, it would be, I'd be crazy not to bet that the capabilities of agentic AI will continue to increase at a relatively fast pace over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. I mean, already, just in the last 6 months, the ability for agentic AI to reason and to solve problems has just seen a huge leap. If you look at the GPQA scores, which are a sort of benchmarking process that are used to measure the reasoning and the ability for a generative AI process or an agentic AI process to solve a problem, have practically doubled in the last 6 months. It's incredible how much that's moved on, and that will no doubt continue, maybe at the same pace, maybe not, but it will continue to improve in the future. And therefore, you've got to believe that agentic AI will increasingly be able to solve many of the tasks that customers are calling in about to a contact center without necessarily the need to bring a human into the loop. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to see call centers shrink significantly. I'm not necessarily saying that we're going to see any major sort of changes in that, although we could do. But what I think that could do is increasingly it could possibly even drive up demand. If you think about voice today, the industry's been trying to reduce voice contact for as long as I've been in it, really, certainly for the last decade or more, and it hasn't really changed. We're still seeing nearly 70% of a typical contact center of demand coming in via voice, and then maybe about 20% via email. Most initiatives around AI have been applied to chat, and actually because it's the easier channel to solve. But as we start to make it easier for customers to use voice and to solve problems, maybe we embed it into a website. Maybe people will start communicating with websites via voice. I think that's sort of the next wave of where this is going to happen. People want to use their voice because it's the easiest and most efficient way for them to communicate. It's much faster than typing on a keyboard, or certainly using a smartphone keyboard. And that's why people continue to use it today, because it's the most efficient way of us communicating. If we can start embedding that into web experiences, mobile apps, and customers increasingly use voice in order to communicate with businesses, then I think that the demand will increase. Now, obviously, a lot of that demand will be picked up by artificial intelligence and agentic AI, but it means we can have more personal relationships with customers, and I think that the role of the contact center agent will have to change as a result of that. It's going to be dealing with those much more complex emotive issues, so it'd be interesting to see how it evolves. But my bet is that the capabilities of AI will increase and will continue to increase, and we'll see it embedded more and more in different customer touch points over the next few years.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet, and I think that's a nice place to end things. So thanks again for joining me today, Stuart. It's been a really great chat.
Great, yeah, thanks very much for having me, Rhys, and look forward to catching up soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd also like to quickly thank our viewers as well for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe to the channel, and keep an eye out on cxtoday.com for more stories like these. Until next time, thank you for watching.